Well, everybody is trying to point fingers and assess blame as to why the Pac-12 died. But as it turns out, you could actually trace it back to a professor. One professor on a Pac-12 campus killed the Pac-12, according to an LA Times article. Welcome into the channel. Here on this channel, we talk college football, college basketball, conference realignment from a Big 12 perspective all day, every day. I'm live on Wednesdays and Sundays. Please consider subscribing if you have not. You can support the channel on Venmo. It is John-Kurtz-4 in order to do that. There have been a number of post-mortem stories done on the Pac-12 here in the aftermath of their death. Who is to blame? How did it go wrong? How did we get here? And here is yet another one, this time from the LA Times. I'm going to read you straight from the article here and get to some of the issues, some of which were already known, but the anecdote about the professor, not so known here. So we're going to start into a piece about George Kliavkoff and his pursuit of UCLA, even after the Bruins had already decided that they were leaving for the Big Ten. This was written about some at the time, but probably not as in-depth as this, and it sounds like Kliavkoff is even further down this road than many led on. John Willer, for instance, did a great job reporting on this and continued to say throughout the process that it was somewhat possible that the Board of Regents would stop UCLA from going, but not a likely scenario. That was the way he painted it. I think everybody understood that it was a very unlikely scenario to actually happen. Now we have some of the further details on what was going on there. So the article says, publicly, the University of California Board of Regents' threats to force UCLA to stay in the Pac-12 and avoid hurting UC Berkeley were viewed as posturing, bluffs to get attention, and possibly some money from the departing Bruins. Privately, Kliavkoff was deeply engaged with a small group of regents about the framework of a deal that would lead to the regents voting to block UCLA's move, even though they did not want to set a precedent of overturning a monumental campus-specific decision. I just do not understand where Kliavkoff gets off thinking that this was going to be the solution. Somehow, the Board of Regents here would be able to stop this and make it all come crashing down. That just seems like a lot of wasted time, energy, potentially money, and resources, and as it turns out, it would appear that that was correct. Says the Regents did the math. UCLA was supposed to make $62 million per year from the Big Ten's new mega media rights deal. The Bruins' travel costs to compete in the Midwest-based conference were expected to be in the range of $10 to $12 million annually. So the Regents did the math. They gave Kliavkoff a magic number. If he could guarantee the Bruins $52 million annually during the 5 years of the league's next media deal, the Regents promised Kliavkoff a vote heavily in favor of UCLA staying in the Pac-12. I mean, again, we get back to this $50 million number, right? We've now seen on a couple of occasions, and more on this in a moment, that that was the valuation that the Pac-12 presidents wanted to roll with at the beginning of this whole saga. We think we can go get $50 million per year, even without UCLA and USC. Kliavkoff publicly declared a couple of times that, at least once, significantly, publicly declared that his league was going to catch the Big Ten and the SEC financially, which seemed like a ridiculous statement at the time. But if it were around this, then I guess it would make some sense, saying, hey, we're going to get you $52 million, UCLA. Just you wait and see. Unfortunately, that did not happen. We'll get back to the article. It was not going to be easy for the remaining 10 schools to stomach giving UCLA a much bigger annual revenue share. The Pac-12's math said that a media rights deal for 11 schools, even with the LA market back under the conference footprint, was not likely to net $52 million for each school. Not only did Kliavkoff need the Pac-12 presidents to sign off on the guaranteed money, but they would also have to take the leap of faith to sign a grant of rights, binding the schools together without knowing the exact details of what their media deal would be. Lastly, the Pac-12 would have to pay the $15 million exit fee UCLA would owe to the Big Ten for breaking its agreement. Unbelievable. Like, you're in that detail too. Like, you're trying to get everybody to agree to pool together enough money so that UCLA is getting $52 million per year, and then you're also going to have to cover their $15 million exit fee and then have them be treated like royalty, basically, in this new conference. I mean, come on. When Kliavkoff presented the idea to the Pac-12 board, Oregon interim president Patrick Phillips vehemently shut it down. He said he would not have the Ducks in a conference where they have to take less money than UCLA, and any conversation about the possibility quickly died. Yeah, no bleep. Like, what? In what world are you thinking that Oregon is going to sign on to any part of that? That is one of the more incredible parts of this, and we're not even to the professor part. We're not even to the professor detail. You can read through all these stories and just shake your head at paragraph after paragraph, line after line about how this stuff went down behind the scenes and what the thinking had to be here. I just do not understand. Totally misreading the room and not understanding the calculus at play here. But it gets a little worse and a little more stomach churning if you are a Pac-12 fan, so I apologize for that. Kliavkoff brought the schools an ESPN offer of $30 million per school annually for all their rights. The Pac-12's analysis said the schools would be worth somewhere in the mid-$30 million range apiece, so they could go back to ESPN with a reasonable counter in the high $30 million range, and maybe the sides would wind up at around $35 million. So remember, we've seen this reported a lot, that the Pac-12 basically had the same ESPN offer that the Big 12 wound up taking. The ESPN Fox package there got the Big 12 $31.7 million per school. Here, they're saying the Pac-12 may have been able to get up to 35. And it's not unreasonable to think that if they would have done it at that time, that could have been where the number closed out. But the problem starts here. When the Pac-12 CEO group met to discuss the offer, one of the league presidents had other ideas. The president worked with a professor on his campus to come up with their own estimate of what the 10 schools should get based on their market value. $50 million. This needs to be the Dr. Evil $50 million. Boy, just a swing and a miss there. And unfortunately, Kliavkoff did not push back hard enough, which I think has been one of the real revelations in all of this. Kliavkoff probably needed to be more stern with the university presidents, who clearly were a huge part of this problem. It was not all Kliavkoff, but he needed to be the guy to push back and say, look, this is going to get us in trouble. We're not worth this. This is going to kill any chance of a deal actually happening. Unfortunately, Kliavkoff, though, acquiesced to the presidents. Here's a quote from a source in the article. It says, quote, George and our media consultant were pretty clear there was some risk. But they said, nope, our numbers show we're worth this. Go ask for it. This is from a source with direct knowledge of the negotiations. ESPN did not react very well to it. That's the final quote here from the source, which you can imagine that is how that would go with ESPN. Given the stakes of the negotiations, a source with experience negotiating media rights agreements told the Times, Kliavkoff should have been more forceful, pushing back against the high counteroffer. Yeah, it sounds like at that point, when you come back with $50 million, ESPN's kind of like, oh, okay. Have fun with that. Go see what you can get on the open market. We'll see you later. And it is funny to look back at like the narrative of at the time was like, oh, no big deal. It's always good to go to market and have more bidders and more people, and this is still an advantage for the Pac-12. And that's how it was all portrayed at the time. But if we would have really known what was going on behind the scenes with all of this, I think that probably would have changed some folks' view on it, right? If we knew publicly at the time that Kliavkoff had gone back to ask for $50 million per year, $50 million per year, I think there would have been a lot more pessimism about what it was that the Pac-12 was actually going to pull off. And lo and behold, that's how this whole thing worked out. So, look, if you're a Pac-12 fan, I don't know how you read some of these articles without having your stomach turn and really wanting to puke at the way that this was all handled. But there were a ton of missteps along the way, all the way back to the Larry Scott era in the Pac-12 network, and culminating apparently with one overzealous professor. And we can only speculate about who it is, who it was, the university president that listened to said professor. I know my speculation would be, I would just say go listen to the one university president out there that still won't shut up about the Apple deal and how good the Apple deal was that was on the table for the Pac-12, and maybe we have our answer there. But that is just reckless speculation by me. You can do your own research, I suppose, as far as that goes. Hey, you can support the channel on Venmo, John-Kurtz-4. Please subscribe if you have not. I'm live Wednesdays and Sundays. I'm talking college football, college basketball, and conference realignment all the time here on this channel from a Big 12 perspective. Spread the word about the channel. Follow me on Twitter at JLKurtz, and I will talk to you guys all soon. Take care.